What does communicating well mean?
I think the holy grail of all effective communication is authenticity. The ego is a false construct of who society thinks you should be.
What about your concept of aging well?
I think the first thing to say about aging well is that none of us do that by default. I want to age well physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and generationally.
So let's talk about those 5 things, but I'd like to hone in on each one of them because it's very interesting.
When I talk about physical aging well, I mean
Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I got your name right this time.
Thank you.
So please introduce yourself to the Irish public.
Well, I'm Paul Scanlon. I'm actually part Irish. My grandparents were from Limerick, so I have an Irish passport. So really, you are my people to some degree. And not done many things in Ireland, actually. So being here with you and doing a few podcasts here and doing an event here in October, we're excited about being here.
Tell me what you do. What is your modus operandi?
Well, I do a few things. I spend a lot of time in personal mentoring and mentoring groups and corporates around the idea of communication, effective, authentic communication, aging well, cultural engineering, team building, leadership coaching, so all that stuff.
Okay, right. So what does communicating well mean? How does someone go about doing that?
Well, I think you first of all become aware of how most people are not communicating well, which is what I started in this space. You know, in my early 20s, which is a long time ago now, I remember getting very frustrated about how important people in our world seemed incapable of explaining things to us simply. Politicians, corporate leaders, medical people, scientists, and so on and so on, so shrouded what they were saying in mystery and jargon and complexity. And I was frustrated about it. I don't know why. And I think it was the beginnings of my awakening to play my part in saying a thing well and making complex things simple. So one of the trademarks of my style of communication is that it is to tackle complex things like aging well, self-awareness. They're complex areas, but to try and make it accessible to everyone by simplifying it instead of making it more complicated still. So that topic therefore becomes accessible to everyone instead of an elite few who are in the bubble that the person's speaking from, like politicians and so on.
Do politicians, do you think, though, do they deliberately speak in jargon because, you know, I think they're always very careful about what they say because they don't want to be misinterpreted. So do you think that they deliberately speak in jargon, or?
Well, they're careful till they're not running for office or they're retired. You often see these politicians that while they're in office, they're exactly as you said. Then when they retire, they're on a chat show. And they're laughing, telling jokes, and they're relaxed. You think, where the hell was that when you were in office? Because it's drilled into them, they're conditioned to be told you don't behave normal in a political situation. I remember when Theresa May, one of our former prime ministers, was giving a resignation speech outside Number 10. In the last 30, 45 seconds, her voice cracked. She got tearful about saying how much she loved her country. Then she turned around, ran inside. And I thought, wow, where was that in the last few years? And I don't mean that it's a simple thing, especially for a woman in a man's world, which she is. But I mean, it was a little flash of authenticity and realness. And it was refreshing. And to be honest, I think that's why people like Donald Trump are scoring. Because what you see is what you get. There's no air and graces. He's not a politician. And he says what he thinks. And most politicians don't.
And he also says what... He also communicates in a style that the ordinary person communicates
Exactly.
in too. And he uses word salads and sometimes he gets his words mixed up.
Yep, exactly. The reason I call what I do, this event I'm touring now that I'm bringing here in October, the reason I call it authentic communication, 7 levels of, is because I think the holy grail of all effective communication is authenticity. I can't connect with you if I am communicating with you through a persona or a representative version of me or a mask that I wear, which is what politicians do and others. then we're not going to have connection. I may be able to pass information to you. We maybe can swap knowledge and information, and I can tell you stuff and you me, but there's no fundamental emotional engagement between us because I'm not being real, and because I'm not real, you don't feel you can be, and on that goes.
Okay, so what is this authenticity scale that you're talking about, or the 7
levels?
The 7 levels of authenticity.
Well, it starts...
Or is that just giving away your tour?
A little bit, yeah. You should be paying for this. Well, because authenticity is complex and is layered, I think. It's not just saying what you think, because we don't need any more of those people out there unfiltered saying what they think. I don't mean that. But I mean, authenticity to me is... you, first of all, have figured out who the hell you are. So when you're speaking, you are you. You don't have versions of you that you call upon to speak to us. You are you everywhere you go in the world. You are you. What you see is what you get. Finding that, first of all, is really difficult for most human beings who are conditioned from childhood to not be themselves. So finding you, coming home to you, has been one of the biggest works of my life. Coming back home to me, becoming comfortable in my own skin, realizing I'm enough as I am and who I am, breaking free from and unlearning and disentangling from my childhood programming that we all have of who I was supposed to be, and realizing that's not who I am or want to be. That's the first part of coming into this authentic space. You have to be authentic.
This childhood programming that you're talking about, what do you mean by that?
Well, we're all born hijacked by labels. You're born white or black. That's before you're born. It's decided for you on what that means. You're born male, female, what that means. You're born rich or poor, on what that means. You're born Irish or you're born Australian, whatever that means. So we're born into a number of things that we have no say in that already begin to shape who you're supposed to be as you get older. Add now into that nurture. So that's nature, add nurture. Everybody's idea of who they think you should be, and labeling goes ballistic now. You are a good kid, you're a bad kid. You're smart, you're stupid. You're emotionally intelligent, you're not. You're good with money, you're bad with money. You're open, you're closed. You're autistic, you're on the spectrum. You're dyslexic. You're odd, you're weird, or whatever. I have 8 grandchildren. At least 2 of them are weird. I think their weirdness is their superpower, but the education system trying to fix it all the time that makes them feel like they're bad kids. So my point is that nurture is when unconscious parents unconsciously raise children to also remain unconscious. And who we become is we become our egoic version of us. The ego identity is what we all start life with. The ego is a false construct of who society thinks you should be. So it's the fitting in you. It's the polite you. It's the please and thank you. It's the do as they told you.
Particularly women.
Yeah, 100%.
Be good girls.
100%.
Be a good girl and don't be confrontational.
Exactly. So we all have our versions of that in our nature and nurture. And I am in the business of waking people up. My why, my reason for what I do is to awaken you to your authentic self and then guide you back home to that person. It's no good awakening you, then leaving you stranded. Well, how do I get back to that version of me? So what I do mainly is that. And the awakening needs to come as soon as possible in life. Because if you don't awaken from someone else's choice of who you're supposed to be, which is the ego programming. The ego's job is to keep you safe, protect you all your life. So it loves labels. Yeah, this is who you are. And so when you get an opportunity to step outside of the comfort of who you're supposed to be, you have this internal chaos. Ooh, really? Can I say that? Can I be that? Can I say no to those people? Can I really speak my mind in that area? Can I choose those people to my friends? Can I read a book like that? Could I be in a partnership with someone like that? It becomes a riot inside because you've been told all your life, no, that's not who we are, not what we do. We don't believe those things. We don't agree with those viewpoints or whatever it may be. And if you don't break out of that, it gets too late to break out of it. The older you get, the old dog's new tricks thing, the older you get, the more you feel safe in that identity, even though you know you're not happy.
So how do you encourage people to awaken themselves then, or how can someone do it?
The first part of awakening is awareness. Awareness is underrated because, you know, our conversation today that people listen to and watch, all it will do for some of them is it will make them aware of some things that they have already been thinking about. This conversation makes them more aware of what they've been thinking about, but they won't do anything about it. But it's awareness, and awareness is valid, and awareness precedes learning. So the first step to waking up is an awareness that I'm unconscious. It's an awareness that what I just said to you was complete autopilot. I don't know why I said that to Laura. I don't ever think it's true. Where did that come from in me? Or awareness is, why the hell do I always react like that? Why am I so insecure? Awareness is that. That's the beginning of awakening. Now, without someone saying to you, which is what I do in my space, without someone saying to you, whoa, hang on, you see what you just did there and your awareness of it? Okay, let's be curious about that. Awareness, curiosity are the first steps towards realizing that I am stuck. I'm not how I want to be, where I want to be. Now I'm open to learning. And a lot of what I do is awareness raising. And some of what I do is the teaching and the learning part, which is great. But sometimes I don't get to be that person. You know, they say, don't they? There's a saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. What that means is that your readiness to learn is far less to do with the availability of teachers and more to do with your readiness for a teacher to appear. Sometimes I get to be the teacher who appears, and all I can do today is add awareness. Sometimes I get to be the person that teaches you the lesson and you get it and the penny drops, and I get to the person that completes the loop. All of it's good. I'd rather be the one that gets the thank you. The awareness people get no thank you, really. It's the people that say, we teach you something, or wow, that changed my life. We want to be that person. And awareness is part of that. So the first part of awakening is awareness and curiosity.
So I'm awake now and I'm aware that I've been sleepwalking my way through life and I've been a yes woman, say. So what is the next step then in terms of this learning process that you have?
You deconstruct it and you start to replace old habits with new ones, and you start small. It's small steps are better than no steps. People often think, as you know, with health and wellness, well, you know, I only lost a couple of ounces this week or whatever, big deal, and I want to lose 3 stone or whatever it may be. So people underestimate the power of small incremental things, and I know that's your space and you help people with that, because otherwise people quit, because that's why I think goal setting is overrated. I prefer what I call habit stacking, small incremental stacking of minor inconsequential behaviors on their own, like brushing your teeth. No big deal, but over time it's a big deal if you don't do it or if you do it. So I think it's that with people waking up, it starts small today. So for instance, you might say to your friend, no, I don't want to meet you for coffee on Wednesday this week. Because you know always when you meet so-and-so for coffee, it's a gossip, it's negative, it's bad energy. And because you're a people pleaser, you've always said yes and gone away and done it and met with Jenny or met with Phil. They're nice people, they're good people, you've known them a long time, but you know they're doing your head in. And you come away feeling worse and bad and always saying to yourself, I never do that again, but you do. So start somewhere small. Start saying something like, I don't want to watch that on TV. I want to watch something else. So this is why you should always have more than one telly in your house. So go and watch what you want to watch, rather than sitting watching another program you hate because you're just fitting in. Start small and say, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat now. I don't want to drink, thank you. Or whatever it may be. Begin somewhere. No one's going to slap you on the back. No one's going to applaud you saying, yeah, good on you. And that's why you think it's not working. And in fact, it might be a bit uncomfortable. Start small is what I'd say to people. And eventually, and I don't mean years, I mean actually weeks, within a small space of time, you're going to start to feel an energetic shift in you around these things that used to scare the hell out of you. You're going to feel more confidence. You're going to feel more assertive. You're going to feel more self-determination because you're taking your power back. And you're doing it small, but in a few weeks, you're going to start to feel, wow. And then you're going to start to tackle bigger things like your boss at work, or cultural things you hate fitting in with, or family things that you hate being part of and fitting in with, or whatever it may be, or your health and wellness.
I actually get a lot of confessions on a confession box that I do in my stories. And a lot of it is to do with families annoying you, or particularly in-laws.
Yeah.
What is with in-laws? And so, like what you said, just you start small by saying, no, actually, I don't want to go for that lunch, or I don't want to. But what about if you're worried about someone's nose being out of joint when you say no? How do you deal with that? You're worried about how they'll feel when you say no.
Then you have to be curious about why you're worried. And if you're worried, it's because you're probably a people pleaser. And most of us were raised to be that. And people pleasing, by definition, is I'm more worried about how you react to me than me having a boundary or holding my ground. And if I can't break free from my obsession with how you experience me, I'm not going to ever change, because I want you to always like me, love me, include me, validate me, appreciate me. And if that's a romantic partnership, even more so, who wants to rock that boat? Or if it's a partnership in which you are in some way codependent, financially or emotionally, or for your well-being, or you living, all the more reason why you wouldn't find your no voice. So I would say to people, again, this curiosity word, be curious why you are bothered about why they will be bothered. That's the work. This is what awakening is. It's not awakened at all to realize they're not going to be happy. That's not been awakened. That's obvious. What's awakening is, why does that bother me? That's where you go with awakening. And what that leads you to realize is, there's something in me that I don't like that they are exploiting. What is that? Where's that come from? That may lead you to a podcast like this. It may lead you to read a book you've never dreamed of picking up in your life. It may lead you to have your attention taken by something on a random TV show that you think, wow, I was just thinking that yesterday. What that guy said. And what you're going to do is Google the guy's name, and you're going to find he's written some stuff. Then you buy his book. That's awakening.
Okay.
You chase it down.
Okay. So we were talking about 7 steps there, 7 levels there. What's the next level then?
One of the other levels would be energy. Most communicators, they overfocus on content and language and underestimate the energy with which they're saying it. And I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with public speakers, and one of the big blind spots is this, that they said it really well, but they said to me, I said it well, but it's just a shit response. I just felt so disappointed with the engagement and the feedback. And so I said to them, send me your tape. And then when I see the tape, I can instantly see that you were talking about, say, for instance, you're talking about team building, or you were talking about being inclusive and being kind to people and building that kind of team dynamic. But your energy was judgmental, rude, short, a bit bored, casual, not fun, not playful. So the outcome they wanted wasn't what they got, because they didn't understand the disconnect between what you're saying and the energy with which you're saying it. I've heard people speak about love who don't communicate love. They communicate judgmentalism, narrow-mindedness, suspicion, prejudice. And that's...
So they're saying something, but their body language is saying
it's
something
the energy.
else.
It's the energy. The frequency with which they are communicating on is a different frequency to the language. And we don't buy it. And that's politicians' problem. It's the inauthenticity.
Okay.
It's the you're telling us one thing, but your whole energy is telling us You're not going to do anything about this. You don't care. You don't love people. You're not here to serve us. You're serving yourself. And especially in Q&A, when they're a bit off script, you can see that this is not an energy that is natural to them. And so what I'm trying to say in this levels of authenticity, levels of communication, is that energy doesn't lie. Your language can lie. You can tell us one thing and hope we believe it, but it's not true either. You're telling us you love us, but we know you don't. You're telling us you're believing us and you're for us and you want us to do well, but you're insecure and threatened by people that are better than you. I deal with a lot of leaders who are threatened by talent that's better than them in the organization. But they come across like, oh no, I'm just here to promote people. I want the best people. Well, what about these 3 people here who are actually better than you? Why do you talk over them in the room when they're better than you in that space of conversation kind of thing? So energy doesn't lie. Your energy is always going to give you away. And the thing about energy is it lasts longer than language. That's why somebody can say something really negative to you and nasty and it hurts. But it hurts weeks later. When someone says to you, Laura, what did they actually say to you? You might say, I don't really remember what they said to me. That's not the point. And the point is you have actually forgotten what was said. So what's bothering you is the energy with which it was said. The energy remains after the words have faded. And if communicators don't understand that, we think it's enough to use impressive words, to be showy with our language, to have a great presentation on screen, whatever. And it doesn't. What matters is how you make people feel.
And is this as basic as how you make people feel in your own family? It doesn't even have to be in an organisation or a company. It's this energy.
Absolutely. You can't switch it on a platform if it's not who you are off the platform.
Okay.
No.
And is it because humans instinctively feel energy from each other then? We can read body language. That's why I know that politicians are often given a hard time. Often it's not an easy job, but also they may be saying something that the public disagree with, but they're saying it in a really happy way to try and give a good news story. But we can tell deep down, actually, these guys feel the same way that we do. But they're
exactly
okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, everything and everyone is energy. I was ignorant to that till a few years ago and realized that I needed to do more work in my understanding of energy, my own, other people's, how energy affects us all on a micro level, on a global level. There's an energy attached to what's happening in Ukraine. There's an energy of what's going on in Gaza, Palestine. We feel it here in this room. We're not there. We don't know people there, but we feel it. Why do we feel it? Why are we involved in what's happening globally? Why does the tragedy in the world affect us to the point where lots of us don't sleep well, we are troubled, we are anxious, because we are having the ripple effect of the fallout, energetic fallout of these traumas in the world. And so we're so ignorant to it. And so I thought, I want to be more aware of that so I can be more intentional about mine and about helping people with theirs.
Okay. Is there another level that you'd like to discuss, or shall we move on to aging
I think
well?
We've had enough freebies now.
Okay. I love it. What about your concept of aging well? I love that. It's all about longevity, health span, lifespan, soul span. Tell.
Look at me, I'm 95.
You look great for 95.
No, exactly. So you
this guy has a man bun, okay, for anyone that isn't watching the video. I said, I'm trying to encourage my husband to grow a man bun because he's got a great head of hair.
Hopefully I will inspire him today, maybe not. It works better with a beard. Well, I think the first thing to say about aging well is that none of us do that by default. Anybody listening or watching here that doesn't believe that is under 40. Because I think around 40, your body tells you the free ride of youth is over. You now have to start paying and be intentional about aging well. And in my late 30s, I woke up to the awareness of this, not least because I saw people around me that were, 10, 20 years ahead of me who were a mess. And I thought, I don't want to become a repeat of that.
When you say we're a mess, what do you mean by that?
Okay, they were a mess physically. They were out of shape. They were overweight. They were unhappy. They were troubled mentally with mental illness. They were emotionally not well. Their relationships were not good. They were not managing life well. They're not good with money. They're not good with friendships, and so on and so on.
Okay.
So they were not doing well. They were not doing well in life as a human being. And I thought, they've got 20 years on me, and these were people otherwise that, were good people. I respected them in other things in their world, but I thought, they're not a model for me in aging well. Who is? And of course, back then, I am 67 now. But back then, you didn't exist, people that do what you do. There weren't books and podcasts about this. I didn't have role models. So I began to, and of course I came from a family background that didn't model that at all. My father was a violent alcoholic and abused us all, me and my 5 siblings and my mother, for years. And we all scattered in our teenage years, me and my siblings, to get away from him. So I had no modeling in my family at all of healthy maleness or wellness or aging well. So, in my late 30s, I wanted to take my life off any autopilot possibility in this area. And I began to commit to be intentional about aging well in 5 areas. Because I didn't want to just go to the gym and look good physically, but be toxic inside. I'd seen people do that, and better off. And I thought, I want to age well physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and generationally. Those are the 5 areas that I wanted to take one at a time, and through my life, and I still am, work on being strong, being well in those 5 areas. And you never stop doing that once you wake up to it. So I mean that. And I think I want to say to your watchers and listeners, the sooner you start that, the better. And again, start small, but start. And don't just major on things people see. Major, if anything, on things people don't see, but you see on your internal ecosystem. That's far more important than what's in the mirror.
I think so. And I think that we do live in a society where physical looks
100%.
are so important, even to the point that, so say, take, for example, women. Women may have dieted in their youth and they're still trying to keep the belly fat off in their middle age, not taking into consideration their bone health. And it's only when they fall
there you go.
and have a fracture and they're older and end up with all the comorbidities that come with that. Because in actual fact, strength and eating well and maybe being bigger than like the skinny girls, you're healthier in the long run.
Yes.
So even just that, and that's still a physical thing that I'm talking about, not even talking about the mind, is so very important.
Yes.
So let's talk about those 5 things briefly, because I'd like to kind of hone in on each one of them, because it's very interesting. And I love the fact that you said about the generationally as well, because it's this passing down of wisdom and of love. And you've said it yourself, you didn't get that in your own family. So obviously you're trying to do that for your own. So let's take each one of those individually and say how people could start in those little small ways. So the first one you said physically. So obviously that's...
Yeah, whatever that means to people, and start small. I've never been to a gym in my life. So I know this doesn't mean go to the gym if people think that's what we're saying. I just began to work out at home with I got a couple of bell weights. When I could afford to get a couple of bell weights, I got them. And started to work out at home, but press-ups, sit-ups, and I began to travel a lot and just did that in my hotel room around the world. And I've done small amounts of that all of my life, but I've done it now for, over 30 years. Every day, done something.
But I think it's important for people to realise it's never too late to start. So even if you've never exercised a day in your life and you're 65, you can start today.
And let's start with movement. Forget weights and gym. Let's start with movement. Get up and move. We are a sedentary generation increasingly, and that's a concern, of course. The statistics are out there about the long-term consequences of that, never mind what we have now. So move. So I walk every day, and I've done that for 30 years. I've walked every day. I walk a lot when I can. So it's that is the intentionality we're talking about of aging well physically. I think I want to say too, to come back to the man bun thing physically now. So a few years ago, I'm thinking, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, I don't know how long I've had a man bun. But one time I decided to let my hair grow and I stopped colouring it. I gave into the grey. And I grew it long. And I normally would have it cut short. Never had a beard in my life. And I let my hair grow long and grew a beard. And I thought, I think I look good like that.
I quite fancy myself.
That's right. Who is that person? I thought, no, I look quite good. But others were not telling me that in my family or my friends. It was kind of, are you having a haircut? What's with the beard? Because I never had one.
Okay.
So one day, randomly, I just tied my hair up into a bun. Oh my God, the comments I got. Oh, midlife crisis are we having? Or, oh, like a drug dealer. Miami Vice, is it? Is that? I'm like, wow. Now, when I talked about curiosity and awakening, what I did with that is what most people don't do with that. Most people go get their hair cut and shave the beard to fit in.
Yeah.
I can't live with that every day with you lot.
But doesn't that bring back the kindness element as well, about being kind to people, and how I suppose we're quicker to criticize than to actually compliment?
Yes. But again, I'm curious about why that's true. And I pushed through the pain of that in my family, those comments and remarks, which lasted longer than it should, because they, I think, were concerned that their criticisms weren't working. I wasn't going back. I wasn't cutting my hair, shaving my beard. So it ramps up then. And I'd get comes like, so really? So you're going to keep your hair like that? And then you realize, now they're a bit panicky, that the initial stuff that's low level didn't work, which maybe it has in the past on things. And now I'm in some kind of defiance, like, hell yeah, I think I look great. And then strangers began to tell me I look good. Not my family. And I thought, yeah, because I do look good and they have no loss in telling me that. So I really traded on encouragement from strangers. And sometimes you got to do that in your life because the people that should love you and be kind to you aren't. So you find it any way you can to keep strong in what you're trying to change. So I know we're talking about the physical side of aging well, but I'm including in that idea, not just the body, but how you want to look. If you want to change your hairstyle, I'm warning you now, you're going to have resistance to it. I want you to be curious about the resistance because it tells you more about them than you. And if you're not curious about why are they like that? Because one of the reasons they're like that is, to go back to what you said about the quicker to criticize than compliment, is that if you change something about your appearance around people who've known you for years, they're threatened because, and no one ever tell you this, because they know they should have done that. They're not changing, but they know they should change too. So you're doing something that makes them feel conscious of how much they're not doing it. So when you change your appearance, change your hairstyle, change your car, change your job, shift your energies around, start finding your no voice, get more confident, like, what the hell? And it's because often they're threatened by your freedom, but they're not going to tell you that. And what happens ultimately, which is what begins to happen if you stick it with it, is you eventually become an inspiration.
Okay.
No one's going to tell you that at first, but eventually they're going to say to you, Laura, we're so glad you didn't listen to us because you've really changed this last year. And it's just awesome. They're not going to tell you that for a whole year. You're going to go without it. But others might tell you it who matter to just cling on to that. But above all, you have to know for yourself, this just feels aligned for me. This feels good for me. And I wish more people saw that, and I'm going to gut it out until they get on board. And they might never, but often they do. So now people love my man bun. I threatened to cut it off a few times. Oh, no, don't. I'm like, what the hell? Where were you a few years ago?
It's the first thing I said to you.
Right.
The man bun, I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think when I talk about physical aging well, I mean you must be comfortable in your own skin, what that means to you. And don't let others shut you down, because the most difficult people in your life when you are changing are people who've known you the longest.
Okay.
Because they're threatened by, hang on a minute, are we going to have the same friendship? Are we going to have the same flow? Are going to feel the same about me? I'm as important to you as I was. People who've known you the longest are most threatened by the possibility that those things might change.
Okay. What's the second?
The second thing was mentally, and I know this mental health has become much more mainstream conversation than it was years ago, and we're all glad for that. I still think there's stigma attached to it, and most people don't talk about it or don't know that that's what they're dealing with. People just put it down to temperament and mood or what's going on at the moment. But it is some degree of mental unwellness, because we are, again, unaware that there is a mental gym you have to go to every day too. There's an emotional gym you need to be in too. So the mental gym for me is that you have to build the kind of belief systems that serve you well in everyday life. Because what we have going on in the world, in most people's lives, is they're trying to effort themselves into new outcomes, like going to the gym in January and you quit in February. Metaphorically, we do that all the time with lots of things in life, because we don't understand that you can't have a behavior change that lasts without a belief change that's feeding behavior you don't want. So if I have a fundamental flawed belief in my relationship with food, I can diet all I want, nothing's going to change, and you know that from what you do. If I don't fix my broken mindsets about food that could be to do with my nurture and my culture and my family and my examples, if I don't deal with that, I'm always going to rely on efforting myself to lose a few pounds, then get disappointed that I couldn't sustain it and keep it off. Then I'm back in the diet a few months later, and so on and so on. And what's going on here often, as you know in your work, I'm sure, Laura, is people need to address the underlying conditions that keep giving you outcomes you don't want. And the only time you get a better outcome is so exhausting that you can't sustain it. Because when your beliefs don't support your behavior, all you've got is willpower. And willpower is famously overrated. It's exhausting to effort yourself towards a different outcome in your life when you don't have a belief that's helping you, assisting you to keep doing that. So mental health to me is a lot to do with what are the beliefs that you have that are creating mental turmoil for you. What are the mental beliefs? What are the fundamental beliefs you inherited in childhood? Because that's what I'm talking about here. Our belief systems, psychologists tell us, are established before the age of 10. So what you believe about money, what you believe about love, what you believe about male-female, what you believe about authority, what you believe about kindness, what you believe about being open, what you believe about people of a different color, all these things are established before the age of 10. And the problem with that is it was nothing to do with you. So you didn't choose any of it. You just inherited it. All you know now is you're not 10, you're 45, but you're still behaving in many ways like a child.
So how do you change your belief system?
Awakening. I'm coming back to that. Awakening to realize, to ask yourself, why? Why do I do that all the time? Why am I like that? Because by this time, it's cost you friendships, relationships, romantic partnerships, job interviews that you didn't get, and no one's telling you there's a pattern. And the pattern is rooted in fundamentally flawed belief systems. You know, whether you grow up to be a forgiving person or a grudge-holding person is decided by the age of 10. because that's what was modeled to you in your family. If your family held grudges and you saw that's the norm, it's monkey see, monkey do with kids. Now you're 45, you can't get on with people, you're always rowing with your partner because you hold grudges. And you've done it all your life and you don't know why, because you didn't choose to be a grudge holder. You know, when our family were younger, and I had 3 kids by the time I was 20.
Did you?
I had twins at 19 and we had one before that, yeah. I know, what was I thinking? I wasn't.
You weren't.
But my wife said to me one day, why the hell are you so short-tempered with the kids? Agitated with the kids? I'm like, well, I could have said, well, I haven't bloody slept 3 years. That could help. Because when you got twins, you don't sleep for 3 years. Just heads up to twin people. And I said to her, on that particular day, for the first time ever, instead of defending myself, getting angry, defensive, avoidant, I said to her, I don't know. That was the truth. But it seems like a cop-out, and it's not. And if people could come to this space of saying about their behavior, I don't know, and then become curious about, so why do you do it? And then come to the place like I did of, I'm a repeat of my father. Because my dad was like that all his life with all of us.
That's so difficult to admit, isn't it?
Exactly. But that's what this work is that we're talking about. It's difficult to admit that you're overweight, that you're out of shape, that you're not well mentally, that you are not good emotionally. All this that we do, you and I, Laura, it's all difficult and vulnerable and painful. It is. But this is not no pain. This is choose your pain. Do you want the pain of unconsciousness and living a life that you don't want and being stuck? Do you want that? Because that's an option. Don't tell me that's not painful. Staying as you are is painful. So is change. So it's not no pain, it's pick your pain.
Okay, what's the third?
The third level was emotional aging well. And again, I think this is probably the most neglected of the 5 things that I wanted to do well in. Because people's emotional world, they feel, is just it's just who I am. It's my personality. It's just, I'm just how I've always been like that, whatever they say that is. I've always been reactive. I've always been a bit insecure. I've always been a bit emotional. I've always been, had a problem with my temper. I've always kind of internalized things. I've never been good at really, sharing what I really feel. I've never really been comfortable being vulnerable. I've always been a bit moody, or whatever we say about ourselves. And you think, yeah, and it's shit, because look how it's affecting your life and everybody around you. Hello, kind of thing. This is the awakening thing again. So I wanted not to be that default emotional life of my parents and my egoic identity upbringing, which was reactionary, violent, aggressive, non-communicative, not open, not vulnerable, 0 in my life. So I wanted to try and do better. So part of my aging well commitment in my mid to late 30s was, I'm going to practice emotional hygiene. I'm going to
I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not very sexy. Emotional hygiene.
There's a first. Well, we can obsess over washing our hands and physical hygiene, but what happened to mental and emotional hygiene? To keep our emotions clean, to stay away from toxicity, to stay away from emotions that are damaging and invasive and disruptive and unhelpful and unkind. Emotional hygiene means that I isolate myself from emotions that contaminate my internal emotional ecosystem. I can do that. You can do that. And most people don't. So when I say emotional hygiene, I mean, you don't get to choose what emotions are. The world doesn't. Life doesn't. And again, people don't know that because they're just, the moment they feel it, they're venting, they're posting, they're mailing, they're talking, they're ranting.
They're in the comments section and they're writing away.
No, exactly. And it's instantaneous. And if you say to people, you didn't have to respond that way, what do you mean? I just felt it so deeply. And?
But in that case, then, are you burying emotion?
No, what you're doing is you're creating space between you and it. That's why I often say to people, emotions are data. They are not directives. In other words, emotions, all emotions are feedback. It's dashboard, it's information about the vehicle. You don't mean you're going to do anything about it. It's just a heads up. So if you have an emotion, you now have a choice of what to do with it. But the point is, because there's no space between the emotion arriving and us doing something, we don't think there is a space. And there is. So the space between I experience this emotion, I'm angry, pause, create a space. And in that little space, which you get better at realizing there is one, you calm, you go still, you take a moment before you press send on the mail or before you start ranting back, pause, create a space. You get better at this with experience. And now you think, okay, interesting. That's interesting emotion that I'm experiencing from you or from me.
Even the thought of that, going, oh, that's an interesting emotion.
And this happens now for me instantaneously. It used to be slower and more mechanical and clunky. That feels artificial. And that's okay too, until you get to a point where you have this emotional intelligence, a fast track hack that you realize, interesting. And then...
But you know, people that fly off the handle really quick are very reactive.
Yes.
How would they even begin to not be that reactive?
Well, first of all, you need to know how shit that is to be around for us all.
Oh, yeah.
How are we done with it? You need to know how I experience you. Someone needs a wake-up call here, because you might do it with humor and make it playful, but really it's not. So someone needs to be kind enough to say, can I just talk to you about that you did today, and say to you how exhausting I find that about you and how I watch you do it all the time. Have you ever been curious about that? Do you know where that comes from? Or I read a great book about that recently. I don't know if that would be of interest to you to read. I don't know. Some wake-up call as to you are like that and I don't like it and I think you can do something about it. So I don't have people in my world, any people in my world who say to me, it's just how I am and get away with it. I don't have that. I used to have loads of them. And I used to be one of those too. And I don't tolerate it because it's never true. So I think with emotions, I'm appealing for hygiene and work in your emotional ecosystem to take more charge over it and get some border control between the emotion and your internal world, if you like, metaphorically. It's like a passport control. There's a border at which you need, last time I went to America, who are famously brutal, the immigration officers there. I think Canadian are the worst, but anyway, the Americans are pretty tough. What you're doing here, why are you here, how long you're staying, who else do you know here? It's like an interrogation as you enter America. Do that with an emotion. Internally, have a little bit of border control and say, what is this emotion? Does it belong to me? Where does it come from? Why are you here? And that can happen very quickly as you get better at it. It's a little bit of border control, it's space. Because if you don't do that, and it's just it's like illegal immigration that we're all dealing with around the world. These invaders, these rogue emotions, get inside your life and start to set up a home there. The next thing you do, because that emotion now becomes a regular thing, because it's already in, you start to give it a meaning. Well, I'm like that because. Now it has a meaning, and meanings are emotions on steroids. That's what they are. Once an emotion gets a meaning and a narrative, it's now your personality.
Because you're making an excuse for it almost.
Yeah, and you're saying it's just who I am. And now anybody that questions it and challenges it, they're ghosted.
Yeah.
What Laura said to me today, so rude. No, really, she was really trying to help you. But now it's become part of who you are. You can't even see it's not who you are. And that's why I talked about earlier about the awakening first starts with, who are you? And is that who you are? Because I'll tell you now, it's not who you are. It's who you were programmed to be by unconscious people who were also programmed to be that by their unconscious, and generationally it goes on. And then the next area is relationally. I wanted to age well relationally. You're not the same person through your life, and you shouldn't be. And so you can't keep the same friends throughout your life, and you shouldn't try to do that either.
Can you keep the same marriage?
It depends. It depends on whether or not the people in that marriage are committed to personal growth, development, openness, vulnerability, honesty, self-awareness. Seriously. If not, no, you can't keep the same marriage. You can't. I grew up in a generation where you're married for life, and it became a prison for my parents. I saw my father beat the crap out of my mother for years. And I think looking back as a kid, and all of us thought, and it, in fairness to her, it wasn't that simple to leave. She couldn't have left. Women in those days had zero options. But yeah, I think I realized with this area that I wanted to relationally be careful and be smart, and realize I have changed. And if you haven't changed, you, my friend, and you're threatened by my change like a man bun, if you're threatened by my changes in the way I think and what I believe, I'm changing what I believe, that changes my behavior. If you're threatened by that and you're my friend, then our friendship's going to start to come under pressure. One of the things I do now every year is what I call a friendship audit. And I audit my friendships. People don't do that because I don't believe in friends for life.
Do you sit down and write lists of your friends and just put big X's beside
Yeah, no, I have audit questions. Like you audit your finances.
Yeah.
Or you audit your health.
That's that sounds.
You audit your friends. And one of the first audit questions I have about friends is not do I like this person, but do I like who I am around this person? Does this person still bring out the best version of me? And do I do that to them? And if not, why not? Yeah. And another question will be about the energy of this person. Another question would be, are they threatened by my ascendance, by my awakening? So you've got to ask those questions. So I wanted in my life to have relationships that are healthy, that are open, that are current, that aren't parked up on, there's a few reasons why people become friends in the first place. And you have to ask yourself, is the reason we first became friends, which might be proximity? Maybe I was your neighbor. Maybe we had the same job that we worked together.
Sitting beside each other in school.
Yeah, right. Maybe, we were at school. Or maybe we were in recovery group together and we became friends. Those are all reasons why people become friends. Proximity, trauma, social experience, leisure time that we had. We all go to the same bar. But 10 years later, you have to ask yourself, is that still a reason to be friends?
See, I think people like to cling on to friendships,
Exactly.
particularly friendships, childhood friendships, or say you went through your 20s with someone and you had great times and now you're all married in your 30s and you have kids and people are busy and they don't have time, and there might be someone that's, wants the friendship more than another person. So it's about probably letting that go as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because friendships have to be progressive. Friendships are not retrospective. I'm not your friend because I knew you 20 years ago. The hell does that mean? It means nothing. It means nothing. People change and grow and evolve. And if you try to keep old relationships in new versions of you, it's a nightmare. I've tried to do it. When I meet with people who I used to know, who have not grown, it is so painful. Oh, do you ever see so-and-so? It's like that, good old days. No. And they want to talk about all the stuff we talked about 20 years ago. I'm like, what? And they say it the same way, with the same energy. And I watch them and think, you are not aging well at all. I am. I don't think I could be around you. I have to die myself down. I have to shrink myself to be with them. And I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. So that's what I mean. These become the questions to ask, I think, about aging well, healthy, relationally. And the final thing generationally was, I don't want to pass things on to my kids and grandkids that are things I should have unlearned. I don't want to pass on to them frumpy, old age, grumpy old man, controlling, moody behaviors, mindsets, energies. I don't want to be old-fashioned, out of touch. My grandkids love me. They have a hoot with me. And my grandkids, I have a saying with them, what happens at Papa's house stays at Papa's house. If I want to smoke a cigar in front of you...
So you're going to say smoke a spliff?
No.
He's winking at me here. He's winking at me.
You know, when it comes to my house, I've said to all my kids, I'm going to form my relationship with your kids, not through you, but with them direct. This version of me is the best version I've ever been in my life. They're going to love it. You're going to wish this was your dad, that I said to my kids. So it's that, and I'm proud of that in me. And that's what I'm saying about generationally aging well, so that young people want to be around you. Young people love you. They have a good vibe with you. There's no sense of generational barrier at all. They have no idea of an age difference awareness. I think that's a token of aging well generationally. Yeah.
Okay. We could talk forever, but I know you have to skedaddle, so I'm going to ask you my final two questions. Can you just tell everyone when your tour is in Dublin?
25th of October here in Dublin, or is it Kildare? I've got those two mixed up, and the people here punish me for.
Fine, we'll put it in the show notes.
It's not Kildare. If it's Kildare, it's not Dublin.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes and people can look that up. So
25th of October, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And so what piece of advice would you give young people today?
Well, having said all that we've said, it would have to be something to do with be you, which is a huge thing to say to a young person. But I would mean that be you, like my two grandkids that are a bit weird. I'm saying to them every day, you're not weird. You're absolutely not weird. You're normal. For you, normal. The rest of people really are the weirdos, I suppose. Let's put you as the one that doesn't need fixing. So be you. And I would say to parents out here and caregivers, help kids be who they were intended to be. There's a lovely verse in Proverbs in the Bible that says, raise up a child in the way that they should go. And in their old age, they won't depart from it. I think what it means is that parents should pay attention to the intuitive inclinations of their kids, not what school tells them to like or love, not what blood family tells them to be or do, but their intuitive self. See it, spot it, encourage it. One of my grandchildren that would be one of the two weirdos, she has a wicked sense of humor, but it gets her in trouble. But I think it's a superpower. She has wit, she's fast, she's sharp, and I think it will serve her well in life. But people experience it as rude, disrespectful, because she's only 12, 13, I think. It's that. So my job is to say to her, you know what you did today, I watched that, it was just brilliant. Here's how I think that could really help you in such and such a situation. And now she uses it at school with bullies or with people that like try to get, so she intellectually overwhelms them rather than getting physical because she's so sharp. So I think it's that I'd say to young people. And I also want to say to young people, 80% of what's said to you about you in your youth is bullshit. 80% of what people tell you about you is not true. Who you are, who they think you are, what they think you're good or bad at, what they think you should or shouldn't do with your life, how they read you is not true. It's they're projecting themselves on you. 20% or 2 things out of 10 are going to be true. Focus on those 2 things. Those 2 things are going to be your superpowers.
Okay. And what is the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is to find out what the meaning of life is for you. That's the meaning of life. There is no meaning of life. apart from what life means to you. No one can tell you beyond the obvious things. Be a great human, be kind, love people, live a life of service. All of that stuff we'd say to any human being. But what your life means to you, you have to figure that out. And the sooner the better, as we said earlier in this conversation. What I do know about meaning is this. Human beings are meaning-making machines. We are. I say that because everybody wants to tell you what something means in your life. Like I said about young people and that 80% of stuff. I've discovered in my life, in the last 20 odd years, meaning is forged. It's not found. You have to forge your own meaning. One of my grandchildren, my youngest grandchild, has been battling cancer for a few years. She was diagnosed and she was 1 with leukemia. And then we launched into, anybody that's watching and listening knows, you launch then into years of that. You won't believe what people advise you about that or what this means. And what you have to figure out, create space to forge, to create your own meaning about something in life. That's what builds you as a person. So I know what you think that means, and I think you got that meaning off the shelf. I think you got that from a stereotypical mind about those things. So I would say to people about meaning in life, be slow to borrow someone else's idea of what that means. Forge. Take time to forge and make your own meaning, so that when people say to you, what does that mean to you? You're going to answer them carefully and thoughtfully. This means this to me, and they're going to be so surprised because it won't be standard, won't be stereotypical, they won't see it coming, because you took time to go off the road to roads less traveled and find a meaning that suited who you were becoming and aligned with who you want to be in life, rather than parroting what others say. Because the world's full of people who can't be bothered thinking. They're intellectually lazy, emotionally lazy and shallow, can't be bothered figuring out what stuff means for them. Forge your own meaning in life, especially about possibly, like the cancer situation, about possibly life-altering experiences. Please take time to find out what that means for you and then build that into your life.
Paul, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You are welcome, and thank you for the tea and scones earlier. I'll come back just for that.